Hey everybody, I'm Viviana Hurtado from Latinas for Latino Lit. You can find us on the web, Latinas, and then the letter 4, latinolit.org. And we're really excited. This is our last Lunchtime Author Google Hangout, and we are joined by Duncan Tonatiuh, who joins us from San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Hey there.
Hello.
We're really excited that you're with us. We really feel that this is going to be a fantastic way to end this lunchtime Google Hangout series that has been part of our Latino Children's Summer Reading Program that's been going on since June the 1st. We, of course, are big fans of your work, as our participants, and they know you because some of your books are, in fact, in our Summer Reading Program list. What I wanted to start with, though, is a lot of big things have happened this year. This has probably been a very big year. I had the pleasure of meeting La Nenita just 5 minutes ago. You and your wife, blessings, have a 2-month-old daughter, and it was really terrific. That's a big life changing event that you had this year. But we also know that you have a book that's coming up in September release of Funny Bones, Posada and His Day of the Dead Calaveras. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me. I appreciate so much all the support that Latinas for Latino Literature has given my work, and this is a great opportunity just to talk a little bit about some of what's going on and projects, and so yeah, so I have a book coming out. It's called Funny Bones, and it's a picture book, 40 pages long, and it's a biography, of Guadalupe Posada, who was a cartoonist, an engraver, who drew these very famous Day of the Dead skeletons, calaveras. So in the book, I include a lot of his artwork. I was able to include a lot of his artwork. So these images are his. But then in the book, I talk about, his life, how he became interested in art, the different techniques he used. And then I talk also a lot about the Day of the Dead and the different traditions that inspired his artwork. And I try to give a little context of why he created the images he created. So for instance, here you can see the skeletons dancing and eating. And that he paint those images, that he draw those images because he saw how people during the Day of the Dead went to a cemetery and they brought food and hired musicians to play music for their loved ones. So it just talks about him and about his artwork and asks questions, and yeah, so hopefully people will be interested in the book, and it'll be a great opportunity to learn about him and also to celebrate the Day of the Dead.
Why the name Funny Bones? Because I think in the US, certainly, some people might associate skeletons as something scary. Why funny?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, as you can see in his images, there's a skeleton playing a guitar, a skeleton riding a bicycle. So his images were supposed to be satirical. Calaveras and the Day of the Dead is a celebration of life, really. There's so much color and so much humor, and so there's a tradition associated with the Day of the Dead, which are called calavera poems, and these were poems that people continue to write. And on the Day of the Dead, they'll write a little poem that rhymes, that makes fun of a certain politician or a certain famous person. And so Guadalupe Posada was the first one, or not the first, but one of the first ones, and certainly the best and most popular at it, to start illustrating these little poems. And so just to kind of give an example, in the book I wrote a Calavera poem, and it says here, Calavera love, And it says, "It was a warm afternoon in the middle of May. Mr. Bones grabbed his hat and went walking that day. When he noticed a beauty on the opposite street, he ran towards her and kneeled at her feet. 'You're the prettiest girl I've seen in my life. Please marry me. Please be my wife.' 'I am sorry, senor, but that cannot be. You're handsome and all, but too skinny for me.'"
Okay, funny bones. I get it. And
So, calaveras are meant to be funny, are meant to be humorous. It's supposed to be a holiday that's celebratory, that that's fun and that's lively, and so that's why I call it Funny Bones.
I have a little calavera that unfortunately, I have it on a shelf somewhere else, and I would have brought it to you because when I lived in El DF, I got, it was, as you said, it's really part of the culture because of that celebratory nature and that connection to our loved ones who have passed. And but the satirical part is really cool, and so you can find these little figurines of different professions. So I have a calavera who is a journalist slash writer, and he's hunched over a typewriter, which is actually quite old school because I think nowadays journalists are more likely to be on their smartphones or on their tablets than an actual old school typewriter. But it's the same thought. This is really exciting. You are publishing this. It is one in a series of books that you are publishing with your longtime publisher, Abrams. Can you tell us a little bit about this relationship that you have with your editor and with this publisher, Abrams? And in specific, what I want to go to is that there has been a criticism, a longstanding criticism that publishing, mainstream publishing, can be very exclusive and very clubby and exclusive of different perspectives. And certainly writers of that come from different diverse backgrounds. But you're actually one of a handful of writers, including, I would put you in the same category as Junot Diaz, who from the beginning have had a relationship and have been supported by a mainstream publishing house. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that began? And this long-running relationship, not just with your publishing house, Abrams, but with your editor.
Sure. Well, I mean, it was well, what happened is that I went to design school. I went to Parsons School of Design in New York City, and while I was in school, I came up with this project. It was going to be my senior thesis, and it was a short graphic novel, very short, about a friend of mine named Sergio, who's a Mixtec living in New York City. And Mixtec is a indigenous group of southern Mexico, and there's a big Mixtec community in New York. And I was unaware of this. But then I got to meet him, and I would hear him speaking his Mixtec dialect with his friends and his cousins, and I was fascinated by this, and I wanted to make a project about it. So I'll show you really quick.
And while you're getting that, how did you meet Sergio? Just one day on the street, or did you have a little kiosco that you would every day buy your cafecito from him, going to school, and you got to meet him?
I volunteered at this center called NMAS, National Mobilization Against Sweatshops, and it was this worker center where people of different backgrounds came, and what happened is that he used to work in this restaurant as a busboy, but he was owed all these wages because he was undocumented, but he decided that this was unfair, and he didn't let that stop him. And so he started organizing with all these other Mixteco guys and Mexican guys that worked at the restaurant, and they were able to negotiate with the boss and whatnot, and were able to get all this money that they were owed, and were able to get sick days and different things that they were not getting. So that's where I met him. And so then I made this this book, and this is kind of where I came up with my style, this codex-like style, and it's just about him kind of coming to the U.S. and all the different jobs he had and the different challenges he went through. Um, and when I first decided that I was going to work on this project, one of the first things I did was look up mixed deck artwork, and and um, and so I found all these images that I had seen. I had seen images like that before, but I had never really paid attention of pre-Columbian art. And the in the codex, the figures are always in profile. They're very stylized, and and so I decided that I wanted to do a modern day codex about Sergio. And so I started working on that project, and it was very well received. My teacher at my illustration class really liked it, and different people in my department were very supportive of it. And one day, a professor that was not my teacher, named Julia Gorton, came to critique our work, what we were doing, and she really liked what I was doing. And she had illustrated several books for Abrams, and she was friends with this editor named Howard Reeves at Abrams. And so she said, "Oh, I'd like to show this to this editor I've worked with. I think he would really like what you do." And I said, "Sure, here, take this image, have this sample." And so she showed it to him, and he liked it, and he contacted me. And then I went to the Abrams office, which happened to be like 4 blocks away from where I went to school. And he liked my work, and he told me, if we receive a manuscript that we think suits your illustration work, we'd like to work with you. Because usually picture books are most often written by one person and illustrated by another person. And I told him, well, I like writing also. In fact, I'm taking all these writing classes at the New School. Parsons School of Design is part of the New School University. And he said, "Oh, well, if you write something, send it to me." He gave me his email. And then some months later, some weeks later, I had this idea for my first book, which is called Dear Primo, a letter to my cousin, about 2 cousins, one that lives in a rural community in Mexico and one that lives in an urban center in the US. And they send letters back and forth to each other. And when I first wrote it, it rhymed. And I'm terrible at rhyming.
Although I would say that the Calavera love story rhymed, so I got.
Well, I can rhyme maybe for a paragraph, but more than that, I'm not very good. And so he was very kind. He said, "We really like this story. We want to publish it. We think it's a great idea, great concept, but no rhyming, please." And so then that was my first job really out of college. I started working on the book, and we revised it several times. I sent him different revisions, and he sent me comments, and then that became this book, which is the first book I published with Abrams, and that Howard Reeves edited. And now that one, Funny Bones, is my 5th book with Abrams, and he's been the editor for all 5 books.
Besides Dear Primo, which you just talked about, and Funny Bones, so it's the bookends here, literally, your first and your latest book. You also have Diego Rivera, His World and Ours, Pancho Rabbit and the Coyote, and then separate is Never Equal. I've actually read and I think part of it is because even though you are that rare combination, as you just noted, of an illustrator and an author, and even though I guess a genre that would be most associated with you is children's literature, I feel that the topics in your books are very appealing to an older kid, to not say an adult like myself. So talk to me a little bit in all of these cases, particularly Separate is Never Equal, which is a story of Silvia Mendez. That is the young woman and her family who sued the state of California for a better education. And in fact, it's the predecessor to the historic Brown versus Board of Education, which guaranteed, which desegregated schools. Talk to us about what some would consider pretty heavy topics. And you've also touched upon immigration, certainly, that some people may think are pretty heavy topics for kids.
Well, I mean, I think kids are extremely intelligent. and I try to write about things that I'm interested in. I'm passionate about, So I when I write, when I illustrate, I don't think, oh, this is for kids, so I need to like dumb it down, or or like, what do kids like, or something. I try and make about things that interest me, that I'm passionate about, and then I try and do it in such a way that hopefully it's accessible, that it's interesting to kids. So in the case of the Mendez story, that was challenging to try and I wanted to put enough information in there, dates and names and certain things that were important, but also not make it so overwhelming that it was too just too overwhelming for a child, or I had to explain some things, try and simplify what what a case means, or what an appeal means, or different things like that, to so that hopefully that they'll be able to understand it. But I think with that book, for example, the response has been so positive, and kids are immediately connect to the story. They immediately see the injustice in the story. They relate to it because it happens in a school classroom setting, and I think they also relate very much to it because there's a lot of parallels to nowadays to what happened in the Mendez case. In the story that takes place in the 1940s. Schools were segregated, and segregation was legal. After the Mendez case made it so that segregation was no longer legal in California, and then the Brown case made it so that segregation was no longer legal in the United States. But there's a lot of segregation that still happens nowadays, and schools in poor neighborhoods tend to be mostly Latino and African American children. I include some statistics, and at the end of the book, that segregation has increased in the last year. And so I think kids see that a lot of those issues that happen in the story are they can relate to it, and they also. I think another thing that happens a lot when I'm able to read this story and talk to kids about it is that they immediately make connections to the civil rights and to Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, but I think it also helps them realize that there were all these other groups, Latinos, Asian Americans, different people at the time, that there was a lot of prejudice that also had similar struggles to African Americans, and also that there were a lot of people that maybe we don't know today as these great civil rights leaders, but that it took sort of courageous families to kind of stand up and fight these little battles that later on made a change, at least legally.
And it takes an author illustrator 60, 70 years later to rescue this important part of our history from obscurity, because a lot of people didn't know about the case of Sylvia Mendez, and kind of how it laid down the foundation for what would be a national landmark case in Brown versus Board of Education. That book has done very well, and it's received a lot of awards. And I know that with Margarita Engel, who was our first Lunchtime Author Google Hangouts in 2000 for our summer reading of this summer, you and Margarita will be coming in September to receive the 2015 Americas Award at the Library of Congress. There is a very good possibility that the DC chapter of Latinas for Latino Lit, that's me, will be in the first row applauding wildly. But tell us about what these awards mean. What is the most important award you've ever gotten, whether it's this one, which is a big deal being presented at the Library of Congress, or another one? Why?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had the fortune of receiving several awards and several honorable mentions. I've had the chance of receiving the Pura Belpre Award, the Tomas Rivera Mexican American Children's Book Award. Separate is Never Equal won an award called the Jane Addams Award. And so all these awards, what they do is they give the book visibility. They kind of help it. Sometimes when a person, a librarian, a teacher is looking for books for their library, their classroom, and they're not sure where to start, often they'll see, well, let me see what, recommended list, let me see awards or honorable mentions. So it definitely helps the book just receive more visibility. It also helps, kind of going a little bit to what you were asking before with publishers. It also helps them, it also helps my publisher take more chances on my projects, because they see that people are responding to it, that people see the kind of the value in a multicultural book, in a book that deals with social justice, in a book that deals with Latinos. So I mean, I feel very fortunate, and it definitely does a great deal to boost book sales and to give visibility to the project.
There is a direct connection, of course, between these kind of recognitions and mainstream publishing house, and as you just noted, how these books are accessed by librarians and teachers so that it gets to children. And with our student bodies changing and becoming more multicultural, certainly more Latinos, there is just this opportunity that these children are gonna have now more access to these books and to see themselves reflected in something like a book and in the stories of America that are being written about them. It's representation, and it's being a part of that. One of the things that I was going to ask you was one of the many things that make you very unique is that you were born in El Distrito Federal in Mexico City, and raised in San Miguel, which is where you are right now. But you were educated in the United States, and you have a very interesting back and forth, kind of va-et-vient relationship, the U.S.-Mexico. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that impacted you as an artist, and the inspiration that it helped to, I think, shape your vision as an illustrator and as a writer?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it has had a huge impact, and sort of growing up in Mexico, I was always interested in drawing and in writing, and like as a kid, I was really into anime and manga, and then I was also really into comic books, into Spider-Man and the X-Men. I would create my own superheroes and make my own little comic books. Later on in high school, I became interested in, I went to high school in the United States, and I became very interested in painting, and painters like Van Gogh and Egon Schiele. But it wasn't towards the end of my time in college that I became more interested in kind of in Mexican art. And I think part of it was that, was sort of like being away from Mexico, I became nostalgic for a lot of things that were around me. I became kind of interested. I think sometimes when you're in a place, sometimes you don't see all the great things around you. You just kind of take them for granted. You take the different traditions, the different food, the different music as just what it is, But I think sometimes when you're able to live in a different place, you kind of you appreciate it and become more curious about it, and want to celebrate it. And I think that's, I think there's obviously there's so many Latinos in the United States that share that sentiment. There's obviously people make a home in the United States, but we still want to celebrate, our roots and our different traditions and where we come from. So yeah, I think it's had a huge impact. And I feel just very, very fortunate that I do have, I have family in both countries. I'm able to live in both places. I also have a lot of responsibilities in both countries. I pay taxes in 2 countries. I vote in 2 countries and whatnot. But I feel very fortunate that I'm able to experience these two different cultures, and hopefully that helps me appreciate the positive things that each place has to offer.
And in many ways, the positive impact that immigration has had on both countries, certainly from a cultural standpoint, and from another standpoint. In an interview in 2014 with NBC News, you spoke about why you write on the topics that you write, which we've been talking about, and your audience, which is specifically, which is children, and specifically Latino children. And you say, quote, "Hopefully in my books, they see themselves and some of their reality reflected. I hope they see familiar objects, learn about their history and traditions, and feel proud," unquote. Is that something you feel that is maybe lacking in, which is making a connection with children from a diverse background, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the culture at large, that, you know, they're welcomed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important for students, for children to see themselves in the books they read, because then it lets them know that their stories are important. You know, for example, the book I wrote with Pancho Rabbit and the Coyote, which is an allegory for undocumented immigrants. You know, whatever your politics are, you know, it's a very traumatic and difficult situation that people go through, and that children often go through to come to the United States. And I've had some very powerful moments where children, you know, they read the book and they immediately relate to maybe some of the experiences they've had or that their families have had. And I think it lets them know that their voice is important, that their story is important, that, you know, that what they've gone through, what's around them matters. So I think that, I mean, that's definitely something I aim to do. And for children that, you know, that haven't had those experiences, I think hopefully it creates empathy. You know, I think sometimes there's so much, you know, negativity thrown around, but I think sometimes people just don't realize where other people are coming from and what struggles they go through. Same thing a little bit with the Separate is Never Equal book. And then hopefully once people see these kinds of stories, it creates connections and it creates bridges, whether it's your own story or it's the story of your classmate or your neighbor.
I feel that a lot of, that's one of the many things that makes Latin American art and literature so rich, is this compromiso social, right? There is a political engagement and commitment that artists and authors, musicians that are formed in Latin America are not afraid to shy away from. Did you ever think when you were at Parsons, or when you were just getting so excited about art in high school and in school, that you would maybe do something much more abstract, or, you know, light shows or performance art? You kind of have doubled down on heritage, history, culture, and political themes. Is that your compromiso social, is to elevate these stories and specifically to speak to these children and say, kid, you belong, and kid, no matter your background, no matter if you're undocumented, it's going to be okay?
Yeah, I mean, that's also been, you know, I've always been interested in art, but I've also been interested in social justice and politics and those kinds of issues for many years. And it's also something that, you know, when I was in college, I tried to take different classes like that worker center that I talked about. It started because I was in this like community organizing class. And so it's always been an interest of mine. And yeah, for me, the art that I find most interesting is art that it's kind of more connected to everyday experience, you know, and to people, and that hopefully has some kind of impact. And I mean, I think that's one of the the beauties of children's literature and of illustration is that, you know, I get to be creative. I get to express myself, but hopefully I also get to connect to people and to talk about issues that matter in a way that's much more um, connected and less in an art bubble, you know, and more kind of just more connected to people's experiences. And but yeah, I mean, I'm very happy. I think it's a great field, um, and I'm able to, you know, to talk about things that matter to me and try and do so in a creative way, and people have responded very positively.
My last question to you is concerns one of the big events that we started off with, which is the fact that this year you became a dad. And La Nenita is 2 months old. I got to meet her really quickly. Can you just tell us really quickly what, and you know, it's all really new, but how has being a dad to a precious 2-month-old, how has that changed you as a person and maybe even as an artist and a writer?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I think, you know, she teaches me and you know, me and my wife so much, you know, just about, first of all, it's just such a great gift, you know, you just feel so much love, you know, I feel so much love for my daughter and I care for her so much. And you know, and you just kind of, it's challenging, of course, you know, but you just have it, but it teaches you a lot about patience, I think, you know, and just about trying to, you know, to have the best attitude and to be loving. And then as an artist, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I definitely think I'm much more, you know, I'm definitely trying to think of ideas for like board books, for books for younger children. And I find myself kind of making up songs a lot. And um, and so I'm not quite sure, but it's definitely, you know, it's so rewarding. And you know, like my, you know, like I love going for a walk, you know, carrying her and going for a walk, and it's so nice. It's very, very special, and I feel very, very happy and fortunate.
I can't wait to hear the nursery rhymes, because you do have a knack for rhyming, as we all heard at the very beginning with Calavera Love. Duncan Tonatiuh, you can find out more about him at his website, which is his name, duncantonatiuh.com. Remember that his book, Funny Bones, Posada, and his Day of the Dead Calaveras is his next book that will be released in September. So go to his website to find out more about it. And Duncan, we can't thank you enough. I think we ended our Lunchtime Author Google Hangouts with a bang. And this is just also a real, it's really icing on the cake of what's been a terrific Latino Children's Summer Reading Program, with you being a big part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm always happy that, you know, I'm always very appreciative for the support that Latinas for Latino Literature has given my work, and I'm very happy that I got this opportunity to talk and chat. I hope people enjoyed it.
I'm sure they did, and we're going to continue to support your terrific work, so keep it coming. Thanks a lot, Duncan. Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao, Vienna.
Gracias.
De nada, gracias a ti.